Oh, we're live.
We're live.
We're live.
Hello, everybody. So, I'm here from Robert Dyas, and we are joined by Katie from VegTrug. And
Hello.
Katie is going to show us how to plant a VegTrug.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to be planting all these plants today, and we'll give you an idea of what you can grow in yours at home.
Amazing. So I've got some questions from our lovely audience.
Yeah.
So let's get started. So tell me what a raised bed is.
So a raised bed is, as you can see here, it's a perfect example. So the VegTrug is a raised bed, and it's essentially a raised up growing area. So it's waist high, and that has many benefits.
Fantastic. And why would you use a raised bed?
So raised beds are great because they are good for accessibility. So these are perfect for wheelchair users. Also for elderly people, so bending over, so you don't have to get down on the floor. It's quite good for pests as well. So the slugs and snails tend to not go for these as much as they would ground level growing, and also for weeds. So you don't get many weeds in these because the seeds typically don't fall too much in the raised bed.
Amazing. And is there? Can you buy covers to protect from weeds and the elements?
Yes. Yeah. So you can get covers for the VegTrug. So there's one that extends the growing season, and that will mean that you can carry on growing for longer when it gets colder. And there's also in the same cover is a micro mesh, so that will protect from pests in the summer months as well.
Amazing. And I noticed that we've got a liner in here.
Yeah.
Why would you use a liner?
So all the VegTrugs come with a liner, and the liner just makes sure that the soil stays all contained, so it doesn't fall out the bottom. These are biodegradable, and as you can see, we've tucked it in today. So we recommend doing that to not leave it exposed, and it will biodegrade quicker. So tuck it in for a nice neat finish as well.
And would you need to change the liner every year?
Not every year, so we recommend every 2 to 3 years, depending on how it's sort of faring up. But yeah, it's not a yearly thing.
Fantastic. And actually, as we're on the subject of raised beds, would you need to treat the wood?
Yes, you will do. So it's cedar wood, but it is a softer wood, so it needs treatment. You don't need to treat it when you buy it. That's done from manufacturing. But after you bought it, the next year we recommend treating it. So every year, give it a nice treatment. We recommend food safe and water-based treatment, so it doesn't leach into your soil.
And that's really important because that could damage your.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's the main thing you want to look for is a food safe preservative.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we should get planting now.
Yeah, let's get planting.
So as you start planting, I've got some more questions for you. So really simple questions, but ones that people often ask. What tools do you need to get started? So
not many, to be honest. Raised bed growing is really easy and manageable. So I mean, you can use a trowel, as you can see here. But I just use my hands normally, unless you need to dig big holes. So yeah, you can get away with not having too many tools. So if you have a balcony, you don't need to have loads of storage for, shovels and a spade and things like that. So easy to use.
And for a planter, a VegTrug of this size, which is a small, how much soil do you think you would need?
So the small takes around 210 litres. So that's around 5 to 6 bags of compost. So sort of big 50-litre bags. So that's how much it takes. And then every year you'll need to top dress the soil. So that just means replacing the top 3 inches of soil to refresh the nutrients for the following year.
That's amazing. And with soil, how do you know when you need to water it, and how can you kind of maintain this soil?
So the main thing is, so we fill this up with the peat-free compost, so that's really important that it's peat-free. The main thing to note with peat-free compost is it can dry out fairly quickly. The way to combat that is you can add some topsoil to add a bit more weight in there. And to check the moisture levels, I'd never just check the surface, always make sure to dig down underneath the surface to see if it's damp. Sometimes it can appear dry, but it's actually not, so always have a little dig around.
Right, okay. And actually, just to say, this soil feels quite nice, and apparently there are benefits to touching soil. Mental health benefits.
And
very wet.
Very damp like the weather today. But yes, there's definitely loads of mental health benefits to gardening. Or the food that you grow is a bonus, I always say. But just being outside and planting and getting, like you say, we were saying earlier, you feel like you're a kid again.
Yeah,
Getting nice and
absolutely.
muddy.
I feel like a 5-year-old, particularly now.
Yeah.
I feel and look like a 5-year-old, particularly with the hat.
Yeah.
Okay, I think what's probably quite interesting to know is that you're planting away, but how do you plan planting your VegTrug?
Yeah, so we've obviously got already purchased plants today. So they normally have good instructions on the back on the spacing. So I would say follow them. And in terms of choosing what to grow, I always give the advice, just choose what you like to eat. Because there's no point growing something if you're not going to eat it. And then what I tend to do is you can see here, I've laid the plants out where I want to plant them, but don't get too bogged down by spacing. Gardening's all about experimenting and learning, and if you do plant something in the wrong place, the beauty is you can just dig it up and move it. So don't panic about it.
And for beginners, what would you say are a good plants to start with?
So for beginners, I always say salads. You save loads of money by growing a salad, which is another benefit. So lettuce is great. Runner beans, as we've got here, they're really good. They crop for a long time. And what's something to note with these as well is they will need to be supported. So you'll need to make sure that we have got some little canes there, which we can stick in and support them. Another good beginner crop is radishes. So they're great for kids because they grow really quickly, so they're less likely to lose interest. Anything else for beginners? So my favourite thing to grow is beetroot. I know you can get the ones from the supermarket, but you can get loads of different varieties, and they'll have patterns on the inside. They can look really impressive in a salad, and they're fairly easy to grow as well, and they'll grow great in the VegTrug.
So I've noticed you've got a sweet potato plant there.
Yeah.
So I'd always assumed that sweet potatoes need, to be dug 6 feet down, probably not that down, but quite far into the soil.
Yeah.
And would you say that a VegTrug like this would be suitable for root growing plants?
Yeah, definitely. So the good thing about the VegTrug is it's V-shaped, and that is for a reason. So that's you can plant deep-rooted veg in the middle, and then the shallower rooted veg down the sides. So you won't be wasting money on soil that you're not necessarily going to use. For instance, salad plants don't need a lot of depth, so you don't need to waste money on buying more soil for that, essentially.
Amazing. And is there any methods of planting? So I noticed you were teasing out the roots on some of the bean plants there.
Yeah, so when you buy ready-made plants, sometimes this one's actually not a good example because that's actually not pot bound, but you'll see here the roots are nice and loose at the bottom here, and that's great because it means this plant hasn't outgrown its pot. Sometimes you'll see the roots have gone round and round and round when you take the pot off, and that means they're a bit pot bound. So in order to encourage the plant to spread out and settle into its new growing environment, you can just tease the roots out. That just means getting rid of some soil. Again, don't worry too much about if you break a bit of root off. Plants are pretty resilient. They can go through quite a lot of stress and still be okay, as long as they just have a good water after and a good feed as well.
Yeah. So tomato plants seem to be a very popular plant for beginners and everybody that starts off planting. When would you recommend that you start with tomato plants, and have we missed the boat? Now we're in May.
No, you've missed the boat definitely to sow them. So they are they take quite a long time to grow. They have a long growing season. So you want to be sowing your tomatoes in around February. So quite an early starter. Same with chilies and aubergines and those warm loving crops. So sort of the earlier the better, really. I normally say after Valentine's Day is the cut-off. You want to be sowing after then, anytime after the 14th of February. And then if you haven't sown yours now, don't panic, because you can go to garden centres or the shops and get tomato plants, and they'll be absolutely fine planted out now. And hopefully it warms up.
Yeah, we've been a bit bad luck with the weather, haven't we, today?
We have, yeah.
And with tomatoes, so
Yeah.
these are some of the questions that we've had from Instagram.
Yeah.
Tell us what a good companion partner is, and also what companion planting is.
Yeah, so companion planting is planting plants next to each other that benefit each other. So with tomatoes, a good one for them is marigolds. So they're like the little red orange flowers that you get, and they're great because they attract pollinators, which is good full stop for growing veg, because they'll pollinate the flowers, which then turn into veg. And then they also attract pollinators like hoverfly, which actually eat pests. So they'll farm aphids and pests that might get on your veg. So it's always worth knowing what works well planted together.
Brilliant. And is it too late to garden? We're in May.
Definitely
Feels
not.
like we should have been doing it in February.
Yeah, no, definitely not. So we planted this out today, and this will, take us right through the season. So May is the perfect time. It's the typical growing season, so you can plant everything, more or less everything now can be planted outside. So it's the perfect time to get planting.
Amazing. And one final question.
Yeah.
Are there any tips to keep your planter flourishing?
Yes. So main thing to know with especially container gardening, a big thing is water. So obviously the plants in here only have the soil that is in the container, so you need to make sure they're well watered. Again, give it a little test, have a good root around in the soil, stick your hand in to see if it's damp, to make sure they give them a good water. And another thing to remember, especially with veg growing, is fertilizer. So we just planted these out now. These will be fine for a good few weeks, but once they start flowering and producing veg, you need to make sure they're fertilized with organic, ideally like liquid feed you can use, or a solid you can add into the soil every week or 2 weeks.
Right.
And that will help your little veg patch producing loads of veg.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Katie.
No problem.
If we have any questions, I wonder if I can see a question there on the board.
Oh, yeah.
How do I keep my houseplants healthy?
Oh, houseplants, that's not my area. Houseplants, yeah, they are another being.
They really are, aren't they?
They really are. So, yeah, they're probably not as simple as growing veg.
But try and get out into your garden, even if you've just got a doorway. There are things that you can do with container gardening.
Definitely. I mean, we're on a roof terrace in the middle of London, and we've still managed to grow all of this veg.
Yeah.
So that's the great thing about the VegTrug, is they really can be used anywhere.
Amazing. And before we go, I noticed that there's a mint plant there.
Yeah.
You've got a top tip for mint?
Yes. So mint. So it can be very invasive. So it will take over if you let it. So a tip for mint is you can keep it in the pot that it's grown in, so you can remove it if you need to, or even better, you can I'd leave it in the pot, or if you're happy for it to go wild, just be prepared.
I've noticed we've got a question from Edward French. Why does my lavender die every year?
Oh, every year. Well, lavender's a funny thing. So they are supposed to come back. So they're a perennial, so they should come back every year. If you're finding it's dying, you might need to look at where it's planted. So it might be that area isn't good for lavender. Lavender is likes a really dry condition. So typically us Brits kill it because we overwater.
Yeah.
So yeah, just double check where it is. It needs somewhere really sunny. So think where it grows naturally in France or England even. Normally it's typically lavender fields are very dry and dusty. So they need to mimic those conditions.
And there's some pruning that you can do to make them less woody.
Yes, every year. So cut them back every year, back to so you want to leave some wood on the bottom. And another thing to note with lavender is a perennial, but eventually it will get really woody and the plants will need to be replaced.
Right. Okay. That's amazing tip. Thank you. Great. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody.
Oh, thank you.
You can watch this on playback and on Instagram and other social networks. Thank you, Katie, for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Bye,
See you
guys.
Bye.